All right, looks like we have a good group here already, so we're going to get started. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone across the globe joining us today. This is Stephanie from Acquia. We're thrilled to kick off today's webinar, Driving Global Market Expansion Growth with Scalable Multilingual Digital Experiences. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. If you have any audio issues, please send them in the Q&A tab and I will assist you. If you have any questions for the presenters, which we really enjoy, please submit them in the Q&A tab as well, and we'll answer them at the end of the presentation. Slides and the recording of this webinar will be posted to acquia.com and also sent to you via email within the next few days. Without further delay, I will pass it over to Claire and Arnie from Lionbridge for a quick introduction, and then Maggie from Acquia will start us off.
Thank you. My name is Claire Goodswen. I've been helping a very diverse range of customers take their products into global markets for about 20 years. And I'm here to talk about, how to engage with customers and make your content authentic, and how language is a critical component in digital transformation, and how you can't reach your customers' expectations without including language in that. So thank you for having me. Arnie, I'll pass that over to you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Arnie Coe. I'm on the product team here at Lionbridge, and I oversee our integration and connectivity solutions. Looking forward to talking to you about the technical solution that we have in place with Acquia, and how Lionbridge and Acquia can partner with you to enable your global digital transformation efforts. So pleasure being here today.
Awesome. Thanks, Arnie. Thanks, Claire. And I'm Maggie Schroeder. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager here at Acquia. I cover our Drupal Cloud product portfolio, which is the sister cloud to the Marketing Cloud, and all together make our open digital experience platform. So without further ado, I'll just walk us through a quick agenda, right? So from the top, we're going to start by talking about digital transformation at scale and what this really means to lead into why delivering localized, relevant experiences is super important today and more than ever. Then we're going to pass it over to our Lionbridge team to talk us through l'experience, so essentially relevant multi-channel experiences, and why, again, this is all related to delivering those relevant experiences and ultimately transforming your business through digital transformation. Finally, we're going to hop into why digital experiences everywhere can benefit from low-code platforms. And finally, we'll walk through the integration between Acquia's low-code platform and Lionbridge to deliver a low-code approach to localization. So a lot on the agenda today. And again, as Stephanie mentioned in the beginning, please feel free to, as we're presenting, drop any questions into the chat. We'll make sure we get to those at natural pauses, or at the very least at the end of the presentation today, where we'll have some time for Q&A. So with that, let's talk a little bit about digital transformation at scale and what that means in the lens of digital experiences. So when we look at the buyer's journey today, it's all going online. And this is happening even before COVID-19 hit, what was that, 8 months ago, right? So we were seeing an increased amount of buyers going online to find the content they want, everywhere from the awareness of a product to the purchase of that product, and then even advocacy after that purchase is made. And CIOs really today are on the hook to ensure that this buyer journey is supported end to end. And beyond that, right, it's not just that your buyers are engaging any longer just on your typical .com website, right? They expect to be able to engage with your brand on all different channels and even emerging digital channels. One of the best examples that I always like to give, and it's funny, I swear I say this every time, I'm never wearing it, but I got an Apple Watch at the beginning of quarantine, so back in March or April. And I actually use it almost every day now, especially on my runs. Sometimes I even leave my phone behind, but I want to be able to engage with the brands I love, even on my Apple Watch. Or another one that's a great example, right, is that we're engaging more and more with Amazon Alexas and Google Homes. So customers are more and more, they're engaging with your brand and your content on all of these different channels. And we need to be able to deliver, again, all of this content in a consistent manner across all of these channels at all phases of the buyer's journey. And beyond just delivering this content, right? We don't just expect it to appear there after a few minutes. It's no longer, you know, dialing into your internet and waiting, you know, maybe even a full minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes for a page to load, right? We want that content delivered instantly. And so for existing content, that content needs to be delivered, again, quickly and always be up and available. And for new content, there's an expectation that, you know, depending on what's going on just currently anywhere, right, that you need to be able to respond quickly to events like, you know, COVID, again, as a great example. You need to be able to respond to your customers. What are you doing as a brand to react and, again, accommodate your customers? And so you need to be able to deploy that new content fast. It can't take weeks to get up on your site. We're expecting that content to be able to get up and available, again, across all of those channels fast. And this gets super complicated when you think about it at scale, right? Because we're not just delivering these experiences, you know, locally any longer. While I might have in South Boston myself, my local little corner store that I love to go to, I'm actually constantly engaging with brands like Lululemon's a great example that's global, right? That's not something that I'm only familiar with because it's local to me. It's something that Lululemon has a global presence. And so delivering, again, these experiences and this content globally becomes super complicated when you're looking at multiple sites, multiple platforms where you're delivering this content, and having, you know, in some instances with, you know, some organizations, multiple brands as well. And so the question becomes, right, how do we deliver that consistent content experience across all of these channels and across all of these sites consistently, right? And maintain that high level of, again, customer experience at the end of the day. And at the same time, how do we keep all of these sites relevant to the customers we're delivering them to? When we talk about delivering globally, right, it becomes super important, again, for this content to be relevant to your global audiences. And that can't just be done, right, with the same exact content. And I'm actually going to, at this point, pass it over to Claire from the Lionbridge team to walk us through a little bit more in depth what it means to deliver relevant content to a global audience. So Claire, with that, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Maggie. So Maggie's really kind of set up what the challenges brands are having today about delivering this relevant experience globally, because this content explosion has really kind of taken off over the last 5 to 10 years, where customers want to engage with your brand on all the different channels and all the different touch points that they have in their lives. And they want to have that consistent, relevant, authentic experience where they feel connected to your brand everywhere they meet you. And that's true whether they are in your home market, and that market might be English or it might be another language, or whatever market that you have and that you are addressing. If you can move on to the next slide, Maggie. And so what's really important is that you can't meet that expectation of the customer unless you really get the language and the culture right. So if you are just because the experience the experience that they're having is really emotional. How the customer feels about your brand is really truly drives the satisfaction that they feel when they're engaging with you. And there isn't really anything more personal around the customer experience than that language and their culture. If they don't feel that the experience that you are giving them is authentic, feels relevant to them, is something that they can understand and access in the language that they're getting, they won't feel that connection. And if you don't deliver them an authentic experience across all the different touch points, if they can only engage with you in one place, they won't get the same experience that one of your customers is getting in another market. So it's really important to deliver that language touch point across all the different places, whether it is just .com, and Maggie alluded to this in her piece, that if they want to connect with you on the social channel, perhaps on the Apple Watch, perhaps on an Amazon Alexa, they want to be able to talk, engage with you through voice search, engage with you through your channels, and feel connected to your brand. Another really important piece to this is it's not just about the experience and the connection they have with your brand. It's also about whether or not there is this sort of frictionless path to purchase. So they may have connected with your brand, they may feel attached to your brand, and they may have gone down all the paths and decided to purchase something. But if they don't get to the point where it feels they can purchase in a currency or a buying preference or a payment method that is accessible in their region, that's where you'll see cart drop off. That's where you'll see somebody abandoning a cart at the last minute, which is really about return on investment that you've made when you're going into translation in that market. So getting language and localization right is more than just engagement. It's more than just connection with your audience. It's also about sales and revenue for you as a customer. The other thing that's really important as well is around this digital transformation. We've all seen this being accelerated now around COVID, but connecting and supporting your customer after purchase is also being critical as well. Being able to support them after they've made a purchase has been very important around a digital transformation strategy. So if you can move on to the next slide as well, Maggie, we can talk about some things that are all around trends that have been impacting brands recently. Lots of them have an undercurrent of language. Some of them have been accelerated around the pandemic, but we can pinpoint on some of them as well. One of the things that's really important, I think, that we have all been experiencing really recently is that selling an experience is a competitive advantage. Customers, whether they are B2B or B2C, are buying an experience, and they expect an experience across all elements of the journey. They're not just purchasing a product. They want to understand how they want to be able to understand how they feel about your brand, where you how to engage with that brand, and they also want to understand how brands feel about certain things as well. They want to understand what is going to be the after sale experience, how they're going to be supported. They also want to understand you know, what are the other aspects of this brand as well? Do they have a website that they can go and get support on? Is there an account purchase? What are they going to be able to get as other products that are going to be related to that brand? So it isn't just transactional anymore, it's all about experience, and that is a differentiating advantage. One of the things that's also recently as well is brands quite often, we talked about Lululemon here that Maggie was talking about as well, but often these global brands have been preferential to local brands. This idea that they have recognition is becoming the, you know, a place on the global stage. But one of the barriers to customers purchasing that is language and currency, and that can hold them back on a multi-market strategy. So you are competing with global brands who are doing it well, people who are doing it, who have a cohesive strategy. But a brand choosing to go global, if you don't lean in and do it well with a comprehensive strategy, that's where it can hold you back and unlock those sales. The other things that we see brands doing as well is the content explosion is one of the challenges of implementing an effective localization and globalization strategy. We see content delivering the right piece of content to the right place at just the right time in just the right language is effectively one of the biggest challenges to manage. Doing that at scale is requires implementing the right technology to enable you to do it agilely and fast, and you have to deliver it with just the right cultural nuance. So being able to deliver that and unlock that power is very important. But managing that across 30 languages, 20 languages, or even 10 languages is one of those challenges that people are grappling with. Putting in place the right people and the right process and the right implementation of technology to do that fast is one of the things that everybody is currently challenged with. Having disjointed and disconnected teams means that you're repeatedly paying for the same things, and that's one of the and having a longer time to market to deliver the same content, and struggling with having branding disconnected across your regions. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we see people struggling with, and finding that they're not having their content discovered in their local regions, or they're competing with brands or these large Titan brands who have already implemented these global strategies well. And another thing that we are seeing, I was just going to touch on the last one, is one of the last pieces that we are seeing that is coming to power right now is the AI-powered interactions are becoming very dominant. So that's voice search. People are searching by voice now, but also implementing AI-powered interactions for things like customer support. So we see people going on websites, and this is something that has also been very common in the pandemic. So we're seeing people go on the websites and having AI-powered interactions for support. And that's something that we see people having put in place in one language, but that is expected as well, again, for the cohesive experience across language in all the markets you support. So, you know, that kind of first pass customer support in as you go onto a site and say, how can I get support? And you're getting AI interactions in as your first pass of customer support. Many places are doing that in their first language, but you have to understand that everybody is expecting that kind of interaction across all their languages. So those are the kind of things that we see people are grappling with, particularly now in this recent pandemic. It's accelerating the need to put those things in support. There is an expectation that every language you support needs to have those things in place. So what we call sort of the global titans, there are about 20 companies who are doing this exceptionally well, and they're doing it in 50 plus languages. And so they see the global stage as being, you know, their complete addressable market, and they look at any country in the world as being a place where they can go and be on the stage. So if you are not looking at that as your audience, they're already looking at that as being your customers. So those are the kind of people that you're competing with. The thing is that, you know, many companies are not looking at that number of languages as being the kind of language spread that they can go into, because it is a challenge to go in that many markets. But instead of looking at it as being an impossible task, there are things that we can learn from the titans and sort of say, you know, how can we take their learnings and do it well? So, you know, we can, now this is a slide that, you know, our CMO put together. He tells this story quite often with a historical edge to it, but I thought I'd tell it with a mountainous edge to it. And this is talk about digital transformation, how it can be done not very well. And I thought, you know, I'd tell it the mountain story. So many companies are going through digital transformation without thinking about it on a global stage. It can be quite often when if there, you know, the world is out there to do localization with. Most of the content is in English, and if we only serve our customers with English, what we find is that 79% of people are not confident buying in English. And what happens is that they don't want to see that content in English. They won't buy from that site. They won't visit English site, and they won't buy from English sites. So we're not reaching that audience. And so it's a little bit like trying to climb a mountain without preparing yourself effectively. If you were, you know, if you went to climb Everest and you didn't effectively prepare yourself, you would not reach the summit and have that, you know, amazing experience at the top of the mountain. You might lose some people on the way, or you might turn back, and you would not get that final moment. We see the same in digital transformation, you know, or people trying to sell in a global market. We see that happen if the content is only delivered in English. We see cart abandonment that's related to language. We see people going to the competition and pay for products that are in a different language. We see that if they do purchase, they will not purchase again because the customer care is not in their language. So this opportunity, which is out there, that's, you know, all this content could be taken, all this addressable market is there, it's just left on the table. So we don't have that. The other choice is that sometimes people do make it to the top. They've done the localization themselves, but they kind of thought of it as an afterthought. They didn't choose to reach out with a localization strategy in mind, or it was just done at the very end of the table. And so they made it to the top. They had their photograph at the top of the mountain, but because it was done as an afterthought, it didn't have the glory that they thought. And the trip back down the mountain can just be just as painful. And in this case, it was. They had less traffic than they thought they wanted. People were not discovering the content, even though it was translated, because if it wasn't optimized for the channel it was delivered on, they didn't get people finding it. So they had lower click-throughs on what they were wanting. It took them a long time because the people in the region said it's not really working for us, so it had to be reworked. It took a very long time to get those web pages up. It cost them more money than they thought it was going to be, either to deliver campaigns because somebody in region was repeating the campaigns that they'd already paid for on the global level. And overall, it was a lot more effort. And at the end of the story, when they got back down the mountain, they found that the campaigns and the content were really not on brand. So really, what's really important to take away from this story is, if you're going to go into localization, the opportunity is there. If you don't do it, you're really leaving a lot of money on the table. But if you are going to do it, it's important to think about it first and go forward with a good internationalization strategy and optimize for the channel on which you're going to be on. So this is where we learn from the Titans. They are going out there and they are really thinking about this from, from a how to do this well. They are, leading 30 languages or more, and they are making it go really, really fast. So they're looking at it from a perspective of how can we shorten that delivery time frame, and they're making it, faster and faster and faster. And they have to do that with infrastructure. They're thinking about, how do we get the people in place so that the decisions about what content has to be translated and localized and optimized, who has the decision making about sign off and whether or not that content is optimized, what channel it's going on, who's going to have the final say, and whether or not some content is done uniquely in market. There is always a balance between global brand consistency and local optimization, and it has to be made at a kind of hub and spoke model, in the sense of, this is the majority of the content is going to go through a localization strategy, but there will be some exceptions that said this has to be done at a local delivery piece. And there has to be buy-in and agreement and clear understanding of what gets done where. What you can see is that this pays off. Like what we see is, if you do it well, there are increases in sales. There's clear understanding that if you get customer service, you get more revenue by people coming back and buying more. And if you are optimizing the paths that people come in and you have visibility, you see greater conversions from this. So it's not insignificant. These numbers are, these numbers show that the investment that you make in looking at this and building your processes and building your technology and doing it right, build conversions, show people to your site across the channels on which they want to find you, and will deliver sales to you. One of the things that is important to show that is that the leaders in doing this understood that they were overspending and had duplicity in the work, in the cost that they were doing. So they were having, regions dual spending and agencies that were doing rework, and that they were paying for the same technology in different places, and that in order to get it right, they had to clean up the way they were doing things and pivot on the strategy in order to make sure that there was efficiency across the model. And that was what was enabled them to shrink the turnaround time and show the revenue gains that they were doing. Once they had the structure in place, that enabled this growth of the languages. And what we saw from our side, because we were on the delivery side in terms of languages, that we would see these titans then say, and let's add 10 more languages, and let's add another 10 more languages, and let's go faster. Because that's, once they had the infrastructure and the processes in place, the spread and the sprawl that Maggie was alluding to earlier enabled them to grow so fast because they had the right structure in place.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Claire. I think, I feel like what, the localization portion of a digital experience, I mean, all of the facts that you just gave made it so clear why that's so critical, right? Like, even the stat that stuck out to me the most, right, was that, by localizing these experiences, it can lead to a 40% increase in sales. That's huge. That's just such a huge number, and when you think about it and put it in perspective of maybe for listeners, your own organization, how much impact that would have, again, year over year, just by implementing a really successful localization strategy. But that being said, I know that we painted the picture of, why this is so hard, right? Why it's so hard to, really cater to having the entire buyer journey online, why it's so hard to deliver on all different channels, and make sure, again, that all of these different channels that you're delivering these content to, if you're doing that at a global scale, making sure that they're all relevant to all of those global audiences, no matter what language or what kind of cultural considerations you have to take into, again, consideration there. And this just becomes even harder when, the demand is to do this quickly. So with that, we're going to walk through a couple solutions, right, to make this a little bit easier, to make it easier to deliver these experiences fast. And the reason that I bring up speed to market, right, is that in the past, right, it takes a village, right, to deliver these digital experiences. It takes a village to deliver content. It takes a village to even just launch a site, right? There's a lot of different contributors, and you can see here highlighted in white. And I would say specifically, developers and site builders and even platform administrators, right? Those are your typical site builders at the end of the day, the people who are really going into the nitty gritty and the code and bringing these experiences to life. Of course, with information security coming in to say, hey, is this secure? All right, so those are your typical players, but we're seeing new players emerge as well. And I'd say it all spawns from the bottom left there, digital marketers, right? Digital marketers want these experiences to be launched fast. And as a result, right, you're having new team members evolve who, these might not be the official titles, right? But they may consider themselves an experienced designer. They may consider themselves a site builder. So a little bit different, right, from a developer, where a site builder might not have the same level of expertise in coding, right? So again, we're seeing more team members want to contribute. But the thing is that there are a few things that are holding them back, right? So I mentioned, right, spinning up sites takes a lot of time, takes a village. And so right now it takes a lot of different team members and a process to get that site built. If you can't code and your site requires your developer, and you've got one, maybe two developers who can go in and make those changes for your marketing team, those changes might be sitting in a queue for a little bit, right? And those developers have a lot on their plate that they need to focus on. So what that's doing is it's actually detracting from innovative work by, again, going back to those same two developers every single time, taking away from the innovation that they're driving. And beyond that, right, think about brand governance. We talked about these sites at scale. How do you manage and maintain, again, brand consistency and content consistency across all these different platforms and all these different sites that you're creating to support maybe a new campaign, or maybe, again, as you launch, say, a new webinar, right? How are you enforcing brand governance across all of your content, across all of these channels? And next, of course, there are low-code solutions out there today, right, to make building sites easier for those digital marketers. And digital marketers might be looking at those. I know myself as a marketer, I look at some of the other platforms on the market and say, I'd love to use those, right? But the thing is that a lot of these low-code solutions on the market today, they're not secure, not compliant, they're not performant enough for an enterprise site. They really can't contribute, again, the capabilities that you need at an enterprise scale. And so because of that, right, marketers find it hard, again, to integrate those into their day-to-day work. And it doesn't lend itself, going back to brand governance, right? If you're using a completely different platform for building out maybe these microsites that, a digital marketer might want to spin up with a low code solution, they'll start to get into that site sprawl problem that we addressed in the beginning. And then, of course, lastly, right, we talked a little bit about enterprise grade low code site solutions. So I was talking previously about, low code solutions that might not be part of your enterprise CMS. The ones that do exist that are part of, your enterprise grade CMS, they're hard to get up and running, right? It's not just, you deploy your low code solution that's instantly integrated with your site. They can be really difficult to get going. And so oftentimes, while these enterprise CMSs offer a low code solution, they're not highly adopted just because of this tough time to value that's associated with, again, getting them up and running and getting your marketers access to these tools. And so when I talk about, why Acquia Site Studio, right, it's actually addressing all of these problems, right? So, starting at the top, of course, business users like your digital marketers, like your new experience designers, it actually enables them, again, through low code, to start making changes to the site. And we actually have a quick, screen grab after this just to walk through in a little bit more detail just how easy that is. But beyond that, when we talk about brand governance, Site Studio incorporates a master design system. So it's no longer worrying about your marketers going in and using a color that might be off brand, using a font that's not approved by your brand team, right? By using this master design system, you can enable more of your team members to go in and make these changes and know that those changes that are going to be made are going to be on brand. And again, consistent with the rest of the content on your enterprise grade site. And beyond the Site Studio, again, it's connected directly to Drupal. So it's basically like a UI that sits on top of Drupal. So that means that anything that you create in Site Studio is going to be just as secure and compliant and performant as your Drupal site is today. And the best part about this, right, is that it's ready to use out of the box with 50 unique templates, styles, and UI components. So that's all created, right, for you, and you get that the minute that you get Site Studio up and running, and it's super fast, right? And beyond that, right, there's a ton, there's limitless custom abilities, so you can create custom components leveraging your developers. But all of this all together is going to allow you to create these digital experiences, again, faster by incorporating more of these team members who are super eager to get going and leverage, a low-code solution to contribute to these sites, while again making sure that this is all consistent with your brand. And I mentioned before, right, that we had a screen grab. So you can actually see here a business user going right into the Site Studio UI. And right now they're going in to make a change just to this heading. So you can see they had pre-selected colors that are on brand and a font that once again is on brand as part of the master style guide. And now you can see they're actually going in and testing to make sure that this will be delivered both on tablet and it's mobile optimized. So, super cool stuff, and all done, without using any code here that you can see in this, this little gift. So with that, I'm actually going to pass it back over. And Claire, I believe you're taking the front of this, but to talk about, how low code, how the integration between Acquia and Lionbridge can contribute and further progress, right, these experiences, again, powered by low code. So Claire, over to you.
Excellent. You can go into the next slide. So, one of the root causes of, content failing is this idea that, decision making is siloed and that brands don't have control of their branded material, and there's this repeat of costs. And Maggie really touched on these things, like there's no framework, brand is inconsistent, they have different branding colors not going ahead, and that carries over into localization aspects of it as well. That's the same as you're setting up the design of the site, and that bleeds over as well when you're going into you know, delivering that into your multi-markets. You know, what happens when you then want to take that into 15 different languages? So those same things about spinning up a site would be the same as if you wanted to spin that site up into 15 different languages. So the idea of being able to do that successfully and having that and being able to deliver content into multi-markets is really about being able to put in place technology and the processes and the governance to be able to do that fast, and being able to eliminate the manual processes where possible, and you know, have work with partners who can be able to advise you and offer the value around the high quality localization and translation where possible. So this is really where the partnership between Acquia and Lionbridge really comes into play, because you know, as going back to the mountain description, one of the ways to really hit success is to have partners that help you get to the top, like really high quality partners that can help you reach the summit. And in this case, the integration enables you to eliminate the manual tasks of delivering content back and forth, and you know, eliminate and to streamline that process to do it at the speed and scale that's needed for the content explosion. And that's really where it comes into play. So what you're able to do is to connect the two companies together, and Arnie's going to talk about how that works and how the two partnerships are better together in a moment, but have the power and the partnership and all the touch points of the resources of the quality localization resources and translation resources to hit all the things that you need to do for your multi-market strategy at your fingertips without having a heavy lift of resources on your side. So if you want to go over to the next slide, Maggie. And so what that's able to let you do is put in place the technology that you need to optimize your templates, effectively have a technology strategy that's going to enable you to get to your, to reach your audience on a global scale at an agile pace. That's going to, you know, get the content there at the right place, the right time, just the right piece of content. Access the resources that you need to have culturally relevant content that's going to hit the high quality translation that you need, and then you know, focus on things like discoverability and search so that it's optimized for the channel that you need. And these are the three core pieces of things that you need to focus on in order to have multi-market success. And it's really the idea of the right piece of content that is relevant and will engage with the audience that you need, that you know, has the local compliance that you're looking for, that's in your brand, that that focuses on that consistent brand experience that we keep coming back to, so that whether you're, whatever market that you are in, you are effectively engaging with, that they're effectively engaging with your company or organization with the same care and experience that they are in your home market, and that whatever device that they are connecting with you on, that your brand will be, your content will be surfaced up to them, and that they can find and engage with you. And that you have put in place the technology and the people and the process underscoring that, so that you are eliminating sort of duplicity of organization and technology, so that the ROI you're investing into this process is really serving you the best it can. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Arnie.
Great. Thanks, Claire. So we're very excited about this partnership. I think both Acquia and Lionbridge believe in this low-code approach and how it can enable marketers to really globally, digitally transform. So low-code, just to be clear, does not mean low-tech. There's a lot of technology here. Acquia Site Studio is an enterprise content management system with a ton of functionality, a ton of flexibility. Low-code is all about making things easier to use, really enabling users and marketers to be able to stand up their sites quickly, get to global markets faster, and again, really just ease that process for marketers. So again, with Site Studio, you're getting the best technology. With Lionbridge, we're gonna enable that local relevance and that global reach for you. And we wanna make that a seamless experience for you. And what we've done is through this is we've really enabled some technology within Site Studio that enables you to take that low code approach in going global. So Maggie, if you go to the next slide. So what I wanted to demo for you today briefly is really our Lionbridge connector for Acquia. So this connector sits right within Site Studio. It's based on the TM-GMT module that really provides a lot of translation functionality within Drupal. Your Drupal admin has the ability to really have that easy button for translation directly within the Site Studio interface. You know, there's no need to get a technical resource involved to be able to select content, send it out for translation and enrichment, and to get that content back. So really what we've done here is, again, removed a lot of friction out of the process to make it much, much easier for marketers to be able to use Site Studio and then be able to go from, you know, 1 language to 5 languages to 10 languages to 20 languages, really at the click of a button. With this integration, what we've really done is eliminated a lot of the manual tasks that were previously involved in going to market, and making it a much better user experience for the end user. So with that, I'll just do a quick demo. I know that we're getting kind of pushed on time here. So I'm going to share my desktop real quick. Let me know if you guys can see. Can you guys see?
Good to
Terrific.
go.
Terrific, terrific. So this is our fictitious food magazine, Umami. As you can see, it's you know, your standard website. It's available in 4 different languages: English, Spanish, German, and French. You can see here that Umami has a number of articles for users to be able to access. We actually have some nice recipes as well that a user would be able to access if they were interested in cooking, you know, vegan chocolate nut brownies as well. This is the admin view that you get. So in Site Studio, you'll have access to all of these modules that help you create and manage the content within Drupal. But you can see here with our connector, you also have access to this translation module. Again, leveraging the standard Drupal TM-GMT module that exposes translation functionality within Drupal. So if I go ahead and click that, what you'll see here is that I get access to a menu of a number of different items. But just for simplicity's sake, if I was interested in translating content, I could go ahead and click sources. And the connector by default identifies all of the available translatable content by default. So it will actually pull in all of the content that's able to be translated. You can see here that it supports translatable nodes. It supports basic pages, articles, and recipes on the website. So really, again, from a user perspective, very easy to see what kind of content I can translate. And it's also very easy to see if I've translated that content before. So you can see here, the yellow check marks mean that that page has already been translated into Spanish. In the case of German, it's in process. And, you know, other icons here just give you other information related to content. So the triangle here means that there's some user action required for this French content to be finalized. So in order to submit content for translation, what you can do is you can click on a few items, you know, 1, 2, or many, and you can hit request translation. And that's going to send you to a cart where you can say, you know, Arnie's newest job. You can type in any PO reference that you might have that you want to refer to, and any notes that you want to send to your project manager. You know, please start this ASAP. You can see here that the connectors automatically pulled in all of the items related to those pages that I selected. So those 2 pages actually have a number of items that make up those 2 pages. So those are automatically being brought into the job. I can select the language that I want to go with. I can see the total words that I'm looking to translate, and I can go ahead and submit that job for translation. So super easy. With that, that job has been sent off for translation. we at Lionbridge will automatically receive that job and start that work right away based upon the instructions that we were given. You as a user have the ability, if you click on the Jobs tab right here, you can see that that job has already been submitted here for translation and is currently in process. And again, from this job dashboard, you can see the status of all of your current translation work. You know, you can see things that are in process, things that have been returned that need review. And once content has actually been approved and has been certified for review, it will automatically feed back into Site Studio exactly in the right place for it to be deployed in language. So again, just very quick highlight of the low code approach that we have for this integration. And I think, again, the benefit of this is it's an easy to use interface for marketers to use to be able to get into language quickly and efficiently. And again, you can imagine, you know, everyone's been using the COVID use case. If somebody had a press release that they wanted to push out there, some content can easily be done in here, created right in Site Studio, and then sent out literally within minutes of that content being created. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and I'll let you go back to the deck if you'd like, Maggie.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Arnie. That was awesome. We did have one question come through while you were presenting. Let me just pull that up so I can reference it. If a page has components that have been translated before, will the connector still send it? I believe the answer is no, right? The connector will know.
Correct. Correct. The connector will not send it. The connector also has the ability to identify content that's been translated before as well. So again, want to make the process easy, make it also an opportunity to save money as well and get the highest return on your investment.
Got it. And the other question that came through too was, so it sounds like this attendee has two different types of content that they're distributing. So can I have different translation workflows for different types of content? And the example they gave was technical content versus more marketing centric content.
Absolutely. Yep. So with our connector, we have a notion of providers, which is just really a fancy name for workflows. So if you have a couple of different workflows that are specific, you might have one that's specifically for marketing docs, as you mentioned, and one that's for technical docs. We can enable those providers so that your user has the ability to select which workflow makes the most sense for the content.
Awesome. Awesome. And then the last one that I saw come through was, is translation memory leveraged?
So absolutely. Once we receive the content on the Lionbridge side, we do have the ability to utilize translation memory, both for quoting as well as for delivering consistency in the actual translation. The module also has the ability to have a local instance of bilingual content as well, whereby we can pull that content to see if content exists prior to a job being sent out, again, with the purpose of saving money as well. So there is a local instance of a TM, but the sort of the truth TM is always with Lionbridge, with the production team.
Awesome. And the questions are flowing in. So the next one, and I'm going to leave the key benefits up on the screen for any participants who are interested, right? So pretty straightforward, right? These benefits that we have up there: reducing translation turnaround times by 60%. You saw the elimination of that manual copy paste work in the demo. You know, making sure, again, brand stays consistent across all markets. So not just brand consistency in the sense of right, like visuals, right? I showed the fonts and the style guide in Site Studio, but also you know, language consistency as well. And then next, of course, you know, full insight into those project timelines. And of course, I think this is awesome, right? Access to over 350 languages. So super cool benefits there. But the next question that came through was for more internal content. So content is internally facing. Can I reduce costs by primarily leveraging machine translation? So is machine translation an option as well?
Absolutely, yeah. So we have the ability to, just like the previous question, where we enable the technical writing workflow, we can enable a machine translation workflow as well. If Drupal is powering an internal website or an intranet site, we have the ability to do that as well. And we have, from a quality perspective, we have the ability to provide, at one end of the spectrum, machine translation, which is just raw machine created translation, or really marketing-based translation at the other end of the spectrum, which would be that high visibility content that you want to be perfect. You want it to have local relevance and really, convey the meaning in language as well. So again, that full range, we can provide that on our side, no problem. We can enable those workflows within the connector as well.
Got it. Yeah. So especially, I feel like that's especially relevant, right, when there are some cultural nuances as well. When you go from, maybe it's the same language, but there's some cultural differences to the way that they, some kind of dialect change as well. So that would be a really great use case for leveraging the more, specific, I'd say, like marketing focused, less, I'd say, the not machine translation option, right? A custom translation.
Correct.
So one of the things that I think is really important to kind of show is that, we showed you the demo and it was pushing it through the different workflows, but the beauty of the connection is that we can have different workflows. And so it's really about aligning the content to the language process on the other end. Like, we have all this range of being able to support 350 languages, but we really have the ability to align what the quality and language process on the other end looks like that fits the purpose of the content that's on your site. And when we talked about, meeting your customer where you are on all those different channels, some of it is internal content, some of it might be, actionable content, some of it might be engagement content, some of it is experience content, and how you purpose that content from a creation perspective. When you are a marketer and you're creating it, you have different layers of review and time to create it. And the same is true on time to adapt it when you're taking it into another market. So how much time you might do to write a note internally to inform somebody about a process would be different from creating a high brand visibility piece of engagement content. And so our connector is really about connecting the content to the power of the global resources on the other side. And so we have the ability to create the workflows that say, you don't have to send a really long email and describe all your process and then, define. This is all about just eliminating that manual back and forth and getting the results that you want back again really efficiently. And that's all about the low code touch without having to have that, heavy lifting manual piece of it, but making it really fast. And that's all about the agility we talked about.
Got it. And that's really what's going to contribute to that 60% reduction in turnaround times at the end of the day.
Exactly. That is on the head there. That's perfect.
Awesome. I think we have time for one more question. So the next one that I saw come in was, I've had problems before where the content for a language was too long. Is there a way for a manager to review content before committing it back to the CMS repositories, in this case, Drupal?
Yeah, so within our connector, you have the ability to review translations side by side. So it's not in context. What you can see is basically the English string or the source string, and then what the translation is right next to it. The issue that you're running into is a relatively common issue. A couple ways that we suggest that you handle that is you can provide in your instructions some instructions around string length, around keeping string length as close to the original as possible. That's one way to do it. And then of course, we have customers who do an in-context review on a staging server, where they take a look at the translation prior to actually publishing it to production. You know, outside of the connector for sure functionality, but still kind of maybe a final QA step that can be done where you can, again, if you're able to provide access to your linguists, they can help you with that process.
And if I
Got
can,
it. So that sounds like it. Oh, go ahead, Alberto.
if I can just add some commentary here, and that is perfect because all we need is really a review of the content side by side, since that content in today's world will be used in so many different channels, in so many different ways, in so many different combinations, you know, that a review is just about everything that we really need for this connector.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Thanks, Alberto. All right, awesome. So I'll actually pass it back over to Stephanie to close us out.
Thanks, Maggie. And thank you very much to our speakers, obviously, Arnie, Claire, Maggie, and Alberto at the end there. It was great to hear from all of you. We had a great turnout, which is awesome. Thank you all again for attending and actively participating. As you know, these times are pretty challenging, so we're thrilled that you were here spending the time with us. So thank you again. And as a reminder, the slides and recording of this webinar will be posted to acquia.com and sent to you via email within the next few days. If you have any additional questions for our speakers, feel free to send them to marketing@theacquiateam.com and we'll get them answered for you. Thanks again and have a great day. Bye, everyone.